So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper, starting with migrations, because there's no point in talking about Microsoft 365 if you're not even there yet. Or if you're in a different tenant and you're considering a switch to a new tenant, maybe following an M&A, well, this is where it begins. One of the first migraines that we hear a lot about migrations, it's that tools are expensive. And I get it. And it can be true. There's oftentimes quite a lot of features that tend to be gated behind an expensive subscription. This is where ShareGate is different. We don't have a data cap, for one. So we talked about, I remember one of the biggest words that we saw in the word cloud there was data, being terrified about the amount of data you need to migrate. Well, with ShareGate, we don't charge you based on the amount of data at all. So whether you're migrating 1 megabyte or 10 petabytes, we're not going to charge you an extra penny for that. And we actually even have archival capabilities where you can host content in ShareGate's Azure storages, and we don't even charge you for that. It's one fixed price, one license. So you pay for ShareGate on an annual basis. You can even pay for ShareGate on multiple years to get rebates, and then you can get your work done. You can migrate to your heart's content without needing to worry about potentially realizing in 6 months' time that there's an aspect of your environment you didn't think about, and now ShareGate is going to ask you for more money. That's just not how we do things. So we migrate teams. If you're in a tenant and you're going through an M&A and you need to bring those teams alongside their channels, alongside the memberships of the Microsoft 365 group, alongside the planner and the tabs, we bring all of this. And of course, alongside the content as well. So ShareGate can help you migrate all of these teams and will recreate everything that is associated to it at the destination, even the site collection, the team site that's connected to the team, all in one swift motion. You can even migrate your planner plans. So if you started using Planner and you have Planner that maybe isn't even connected to your teams, ShareGate can help you take all these little pieces and really bring them all together to have that unified modern Teams experience for your users. I want to touch a little bit more on that maybe fragmented experience and all of the requirements that come with a migration project. Thanks to Doug from Avana, you're here, that shared his thoughts on using ShareGate when it comes to running these large-scale migrations.
We don't have any anxiety after the fact. So, did everything move over? Is a client going to come back to us and say, hey, I'm missing document XYZ or document library XYZ? We don't have to worry about doing that after the fact because we know that ShareGate just works. Are there certain situations that we found that there's extenuating circumstances and edge cases? Sure. But those are definitely few and far between.
So you can take it directly from Doug. It's as simple as it can get. Choosing the tool and implementing that tool and using that tool should not be the difficult part of a migration process. The planning, the strategizing, the defining how that destination is going to work, helping your users with adoption, setting up training. Those are the things that are important. Those are the things that should be completely under your control. It's that human aspect that we can provide guidance on, and we certainly do it with webinars and blog posts. But that's something that you need to do. And we don't want to be that friction that just complicates the process of running migrations. And that's really what we strive for here. Balancing productivity and security is also important when it comes to our migration. And that's why with ShareGate, it's fully configurable. ShareGate is an in-between between being a powerhouse that can do everything, but also being as simple as possible. We have some of the best UI and user experience on the market when it comes to a migration experience. You could pick it up today, log in, grab all your sites and migrate, and it'll take you 5 minutes to figure it out. It's as simple as can be. You don't need to do a lot of configurations to do it. But if you want to be selective in what comes over, bring my libraries, but not the content, bring the workflows, but don't bring the forms, change my metadata, but don't map permissions. You can really kind of approach that in the way that works for you and really configure it to your organization's needs. If you run a migration, you figure out that, hey, some things didn't come because of XYZ reason. A template wasn't properly mapped, a column was missing at the destination, or whatever could happen. Migrations can be messy. It's very easy to run an incremental migration with ShareGate. With 1 to 2 clicks, you recover one of your sessions, and then you just incrementally copy. ShareGate's going to update that destination, bringing over those changes, updating that destination so you don't need to rerun the entire migration just because of one little hiccup. You can schedule your migrations to run after hours. It's a lot of challenges with Microsoft 365 from a throttling perspective, where Microsoft has this mechanism in place to regulate resource usage. But by scheduling your migrations, breaking them down into smaller pieces, you can avoid those throttling hiccups and make sure that your users come to work on a Monday morning and everything just works. So from a preparation standpoint, ShareGate allows you to scan your source and understand what you need to be aware of. Are there any templates that are not going to be available at the destination? Any list templates that aren't available? Maybe some files that are checked out that are not going to come over. And of course, we give you that ability to check in all of those files so you don't have to wonder or figure out after the fact that this was a challenge. So we'll scan everything. We'll give you that visibility. And from those results, you can even go directly onto our help center, where our documentation team, which is honestly, they're miracle workers. They have created all of these articles that give you exactly the explanation of what's happened, why it happened, how you can fix it, any workarounds that if exists. So we really don't leave it up to you to kind of figure it out. We help you throughout the whole process. And if you don't want to dive into documentation, well, and you'll meet them a little bit later today, we have an incredible customer success team, including Charles, who's on the call, that can help you troubleshoot those challenges, get on a call, share your screen, and really work through those problems so you can get back to what truly matters. Let's say you've done all of that preparation. You've scanned your environment, you figured out the errors and the warnings, you've fixed it, and you're just about to run the migration, but you're not quite sure yet. You can even run a pre-check. ShareGate's going to simulate the migration, basically testing the destination without really pushing the content, without really creating anything, so that you can catch potential issues you may have forgotten and even test your migration. So as you can see, there's a lot of fail safes to help you prepare as much as possible so that the process of writing the migration is as smooth as it can be. We spoke about this a little bit from when it comes to copying incrementally. You can copy incrementally from a content perspective, from a structure perspective. So whether or not some files were left behind because they were checked out, or because there were some errors, or because maybe the file path was too long at the destination, or some lists and libraries got added to the source site over the past month, and you're about to go through that cutoff and you want to bring over those missing libraries. You can absolutely do that with ShareGate. Now, when you run an operation with ShareGate, whether it be a migration, a promotion of a subsite into a site collection, whether you run a report, run a copy of content, you merge two teams together, you move channels from A to B, whatever you run, ShareGate gives you a very clear, concise, but also customizable migration report, allowing you to understand the status of everything that was involved in this migration. And those answers, those results that you see in the migration report, come directly from the destination. So we hand off elements to Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365, like the butler of the new house, maybe in a, if we were to use a metaphor of a moving company, we move everything, we tell the butler this goes there, butler puts it exactly at the right place, and then comes back to ShareGate and says, we're good to go. I put it in the kitchen, it's exactly where you wanted it. So we get that validation straight from the destination, which can be sometimes maybe not user-friendly to understand, and we rework that. We make it more simple. We clarify it so that you, the end user, can understand exactly what went down. And you can customize it to see exactly what migrated and when, and what was the status of it, and anything that I need to know. So you get all the visibility that you need so that you can have that peace of mind that the migration was successful. And you can manage permissions. Now, this is something I want to take a little bit more time to explain, because it might not be something you've thought about as you're considering your move to Microsoft 365, but it's worth mentioning. Getting a holistic perspective or view of permissions in your environment is always a good idea. You can schedule these reports to run at a given frequency and then automatically have ShareGate send it into to the right parties so that they can confirm that these people should have access to things. We give you a lot of ways to get visibility on permissions. But you might be wondering, Sam, why would I even need to do this? I can just take everything and migrate it to Microsoft 365, as you said, and keep those permissions and everything's going to work, right? And the answer is yes. ShareGate's going to preserve everything as it is. But the challenge with Microsoft 365 is with those pesky Microsoft 365 groups. If you have a very custom permission oriented source environment where you've broken inheritance in many places and this library grants permission and this content grants permission to that person and so on, well, that's not necessarily going to work in Microsoft 365 because when you use teams, when you use team sites, you have your Microsoft 365 group where you have your members and your owners and your visitors. And whoever is part of this Microsoft 365 group should have access to all of the associated resources. So the team and the team site. If you break inheritance on your site and you make this a team site, well, you're going to have one set of permissions, which is people with explicit access on the content in your SharePoint site. But then you're going to have a Microsoft 365 group with different people in it. So you might have users going to the SharePoint site and seeing certain content, but then going into the team and not seeing that content. So there's very much a transformation that needs to take place as you adopt the cloud, where you need to become more Microsoft 365 group centric. Getting that visibility and understanding who has access to what as you make that switch, what are those permissions, who should be put in the group, who shouldn't, what sites need to become a team site, and what sites maybe can just remain a non-Microsoft 365 group connected site or a communication site maybe. Those are all things that will come from planning and understanding the permissions in your environment. All that to say, ShareGate can grant you the permissions, visibility that you need to make those decisions, but then also grant you the tools to manage those permissions. You can check, you can remove, you can add, you can copy permissions. Very easy to manage that. You won't need to go into each and every individual site or group and then update those manually. ShareGate allows you to do that in bulk in a much easier way. And the third migraine we hear a lot is migrations being complex with a lot of moving parts. So we don't want you to have to migrate everything one by one. First, I'm going to migrate the sites, and then I'm going to migrate the libraries. And then, all right, I got to bring my managed metadata, and I got to bring my columns. And then I got to bring my content, of course. Oh, and then I got to update the permissions. Imagine doing this for an environment with 1,000 sites or with thousands of users. So with ShareGate, we really keep it as simple as possible. You can be as granular as you want. So if you just need to move content between two different libraries, it's very easy to do so. But if you want to be at the highest scale and say, here's my source tenant or my source SharePoint on-prem environment, I'm going to grab every single site and migrate everything that's found within them to the destination, that's absolutely going to work. So you really have those options to you, and you're probably going to find that the answer is somewhere in between. So as you move to the new environment, maybe you want to pull off the Band-Aid. Let's move everything over. And then once we're done, then we'll go into that cleanup year where we consolidate sites and we move content into unified libraries as we discontinue some of the unused or unneeded things. Maybe we're gonna merge some teams together because some projects start being finalized, and now we just want to bring all of that content collaboration back together. There's 1,001 different scenarios, and you can really approach it however you want. We give you a lot of flexibility for users, permissions, and metadata as well. No two environments are going to be the same. If you go from one tenant to another, the ways of work there at the destination are likely to be different. So if you don't have those columns at the destination, you're going to need to create them. If the metadata can be accepted at the destination, that's a challenge. So ShareGate gives you a lot of options to not only map your users so that you can be sure that your users have access to the right things based on who they are, and we can map those permissions, but we can also allow you to manipulate the metadata in your migration. What I mean by this is if the destination's way of working is different than what you have at the source, you're likely going to need to make some changes to your metadata. Or I'll give you another example. Maybe you're going from one library to another. You're taking some content, you want to plug it into a destination library, but that library at the destination has a column, and the column is called, has this invoice been paid? And now everybody at the destination expects to be able to very quickly validate whether or not all of the items found in the library have been paid or not. But your source content didn't have that library. So you need to update that metadata at the destination. How are you going to do this? Are you going to drag and drop the content and manually go into every single file and then update the metadata for all of it? That's way too much. So with ShareGate, we give you two ways of doing it. Either throughout the migration process, you can export your target to a CSV, and then in Excel, You just populate the metadata however you wish. You can add metadata, you can delete metadata, you can change metadata. You can even alter the document by removing entries that you don't want to migrate based on certain metadata values. Let's take that example again of the invoice. Let's say you just want to migrate the invoices that have been paid. Well, that's probably because you have a column that says paid, yes or no. So what you can do is you can use ShareGate and say, hey, let me take this target, export that to a CSV, and then I'm going to filter my document based on the paid metadata value. So you're going to remove the things that haven't been paid, and the things that have been paid, well, I'm going to migrate that over to the destination. So that's the kind of manipulations that you can do, either from a filtering standpoint to a metadata updating standpoint. And you know what? If you haven't thought about all these scenarios as you're doing your migration, you can bulk edit an existing library in its existing environment, library or list, whichever one you want. So we give you all the options so that you can make sure you're updating things as need to be updated. We could do a quick time check here. We're basically on time. Copy structure and content. We talked about this a little bit. That's the big migration tool or the big migration function. So if you're going through your first ShareGate experience and you're wondering, what is that feature that brings everything that I need over during my migration? That's the guy. This is what allows you to be as granular as you want, all the way down to the library level, or as wide as you want, where you grab a lot of sites. We have a quote here from a partner that we interviewed about their experience. And what they shared is that, you know, they had total visibility on what was going on. They understood every aspect of their environment and what needed to get done. So any mistake could not go undiscovered. Their users were very eager to know if their content permissions had been copied, and we were able to prove that everything had transferred correctly. And again, visibility is key. We're all humans. We want to make sure everything went well. We're protective of our departments. We're protective of our work. So sometimes we need that validation. We need that visibility. And we really make it as easy to understand that information as possible, but also as easy as possible to automate the process of sending that useful information to the right parties.